I'm Dr. Carrie Horn, author of A Soul Aligned, How God Heals His Creations, and Heart Known Series Workbook, a practical application workbook for biblical healing. In this video, I'd like to talk with you about why science and its fundamental position of evolution could never be enough for us to be happy, for us to have true well-being. I was watching a documentary and in which there was a horrific disaster, and a psychologist was being interviewed and was talking about an evolutionary perspective on the brain and on fear response, and how when we're in fear, when we're in a situation that we can't escape, or there's the threat of death or something intense like that, how there's then a strengthening and an enlarging of the amygdala, the structure in the brain that is largely involved in fear response. Okay, so that's an observation. I don't have anything against observation. Then she proceeded to talk about how when a person is experiencing an event like that, a traumatic event or an event where they're experiencing suffering, that it is unproductive for them to ask the question that so naturally rises up for them of, why is this happening? Because really what the person needs in that moment is to get out of Dodge and be able to think quickly on their feet about how they're going to rescue themselves. Ironically, the documentary was regarding a tsunami, and I don't think that any power, evolutionary power at that, in and of a human being was going to escape a tsunami. So it's altogether stupid and ridiculous to me. Nevertheless, I don't think that any of us, whether we believe that we were created or we believe that we evolved, are going to stop in the moment and place our knuckles to our chin and ponder these, questions of life and why we're suffering or why a gigantic, massive wave is coming at us. But here's what science tries to do. And here's what evolutionary science attempts to do, which is really just science. It's all based on evolution and magic and sorcery and magic arts. That's the history of science. The thing that they try to do is they try to say that the way that God has created us, the way that he has designed us, the questions that he raises within us in order for us to recognize that we need to return to him, that maybe even in the moment, it might be more important to pray than to try to run from what God sent. But no, what evolution says, and evolutionary science says, you need to figure out what is productive, and their definition of productive is by the work of your own hands. We who are in Christ, we who acknowledge the sovereignty of the one who created us, know that by the work of our own hands, we really can't accomplish anything productive. Anything that we think that we have accomplished has only been because God has given it. Everything that we have been given has been given by God. And that is told to us throughout the Bible. And I'll tell you what else is incredibly unproductive, is sitting in therapy for 20 years, rehashing the same story and never acknowledging the only one who can heal us. Never acknowledging what he might be doing. Never returning to him so that we can actually experience healing. Another thing that is unproductive is the fundamental position of evolutionary theory that we were not created, that we evolved, and that we are merely here to compete for resources. Let me ask you something. We had an experience of this during COVID. That's very fresh and recent for us. Did that create a conducive environment to healing? Did that create a conducive environment to feeling safe or feeling like you're in a loving community? Because at that time, Everyone was competing for resources, and we saw a dramatic shift in our communities, in society, in culture, where everyone was just all for one and one for all. I'm going to get the last roll of toilet paper. Even though I have 5,000 at home, I'm going to cheat you out of what you need, right? Like fights were breaking out in stores over toilet paper. So actually, this perspective does not lead to healing at all. It does not lead to feelings of safety. And we haven't even gotten into the fact that there's only one healer. There's only one who can change our circumstances and minister to us regarding his reasons for sending what he sends in our lives. Contrary to this insane thinking, we actually do need to be able to make sense of our experiences in order to heal. That's why God sends those things, because he wants us to seek his ministry, be able to make sense of and be built by the learning experiences that he sends in our lives for his purpose. But because that understanding has fundamentally been erased from science, or by science, I should say, people can try all day long to make sense of what has happened in their lives. And yes, that feeling of needing to do that is right. But because we're taking those questions to a human being, by the way, who does not acknowledge God, who does not acknowledge the sovereignty of God if they're practicing in a field like this. They may say that they do, but why is there no conflict within their soul regarding the training that they've received, the way that they're practicing with people, the way that they're working with them and caring for souls? Why is there no conflict between their training in the sciences that fundamentally reject God and their claimed belief in God, their claimed faith in the gospel of his word? Because there's really no way to reconcile that. God has appointed shepherds, not experts. And those shepherds have to have a testimony, because God's pattern is that he builds us by ministering to us, then he ministers through us. And if we're receiving his ministry, he will pluck us from the world. He will pluck us from worldly disciplines and give us an opportunity to prove to him and demonstrate to him that we love him more than the world. If we're still operating within those disciplines and doing the practices of the world, we need to question whether we are actually in him, whether we are actually receiving his ministry and living out our faith. So it becomes quite problematic to be going to the world's experts who fundamentally deny the sovereignty of God, deny that God sends these things. They think that these are natural phenomena that occur in the world, but God has told us, when I send these things, then you are to recognize that I have sent these things because you've turned from me and you need to return to me. That's what God says. So it is impossible for us to heal based on what the world's gospel, based on what the world is telling us regarding healing. It's impossible. And it is actually insanely unproductive, to use the words of that psychologist. It is unproductive to actually go to a human being to resolve the things that only God knows why he sent. It is actually deeply unproductive to think of our existence as simply competing to survive, becoming the fittest, right? Becoming the most successful and trampling on all of the other people around you in order to do that. And then sitting in your success and saying, I earned this, and not helping those around us as God has commanded. Because he has said, to whom much has been given, much is required. But we now have a society that has been set up in such a way that people go to school and they're in such debt that they become slaves to the world. Now they have to work to pay off that debt, and they'll be darned if they're going to help anybody else because they've had to work really hard to get there. I get that because I'm in a situation like that. I still have student loans to pay off. I was a single parent while I was getting my doctorate. I understand the attitude, but I also believe more that God will provide in order for me to do what he has commanded. If he commands us to obey, he will provide a way. As long as we hold fast to the truth and we are seeking him and asking him to give us a way to obey him, telling him, Father, you command this, and yet my employer wants me to work on Saturday. You want me to observe Sabbath. You want me to observe this day of rest, not to shift around your days, but that is the day that you have commanded me to rest. Please minister to me what I should do. Please provide me a way to obey you. Father, I went to school for this many years. I have student loan debt, and now you've plucked me from this field. You've told me that my training is not of you and that you have a purpose that has been set apart just for me since before the creation of the world. Provide a way. Minister to me what I should do. I have a mortgage. I have a spouse. I have children. I have dogs, right? I have responsibilities. I have to pay those bills. Father, I want to obey you. Please make a way. And he will do it. That's the situation I'm in. And he has absolutely paid the bills. But I would tell you that one of the things that he does is he pays the bills as we go. And what I want is, or at least what my flesh wants, is for him to give me a large lump sum of money so that I can rest on that assurance that's in my bank account, right? And that's not what he's doing. He wants me to trust that he's going to provide. He wants me to feel this discomfort and to return to him. He does not want to give me a lump sum of money so that that's where my faith and hope are. That's not real. That does not produce real faith in him. It produces faith in the work of my own hands. It makes a lie my refuge. So it's not an easy walk. It's a really challenging walk. But we know also that Jesus, when he was here, didn't know where he was going to lay his head from night to night, right? He said, foxes have dens and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. He didn't know where he was going to lay his head. He didn't have a consistent gig. He went where the Father told him to go. We even see in Scripture that the saints didn't know where they were going to be meeting, where they were going to be assembling necessarily, right? And for the Passover meal, the apostles had to ask Jesus, where are we going to prepare the Passover meal? They didn't have a regular building. They didn't have a regular location. They had to learn how to hang on God every single day. So if that's the position he ends up putting you in, I just want you to know that you're not alone. That's the position that he's got me in, and that's why I share these things with you, because I want you to know what this looks like in real time. It's not the lie. It's not the pretty picture in a lukewarm church, a lukewarm mega church. It's not that lie that we've been sold about what things are going to look like, that God is just going to prosper us. We are indeed going to be able to lie down in peace. He will give that to us by his spirit of peace, which, by the way, just because people are rich does not mean that they have peace. I've lived that story. He will indeed make us lie down in peace if we are resting in him and trusting him. But we need not lean on our own understanding about the heart of God. The heart of God is not that we would go and put our hope and trust and reliance on something of the world. The heart of God is that we would trust in who he is and who he says he's going to be when we obey him. I hope that encourages you if you're struggling, because it's really hard. It can be really hard day to day. I've had a really hard day today with this particular topic, and I'm really grateful because if I just hang in there and I keep rending my heart back to God and I keep looking for what he's saying and I listen to the themes that he's been raising or pick up my Bible, that's what he wants. He wants me to keep rending my heart back to him, not trying to engage in the work of my hands to make myself feel better and then give him credit after I've already engaged in the work of my hands. That is not faith. And it's actually pretty disrespectful to him. How would you like to get credit for something that you had no part in, and actually, your child disobeyed you on that thing, and now they're saying, oh, yeah, my parents, so great. That would not feel good. In any event, I seem to have gotten off topic, but I really haven't. The point that I'm trying to impart to you in this video is that we're not productive by the work of our hands. God is going to bless us for obedience. He will punish us for disobedience. Don't misunderstand that. Don't think that you can just take a ruler and see by the world standards whether someone is blessed or not based on what they have materially, because I just told you that that's not how God works. He works by his Spirit. So you might actually experience less monetary resources than you previously had, but more peace than you've ever had. And understand that in terms of the prosperity that God talks about in the Bible, there are places in the Bible where he says we're going to eat as much as we want, we're going to drink as much as we want for free from the well of life. We're going to be in his presence. There will be no one to make us afraid. We're going to live in the land he's promised to us. Once this age is done and we have endured till the end, then we will be saved and we will be with the Lord forever. We will not want for anything. We're not going to suffer in the ways that we have suffered here in this world. But we do indeed have to endure, and we do indeed have to prove that we believe in the sovereignty of God. Now, going back to what I originally talked about, if we believe in the sovereignty of God, there's no way that we're going to feed into this lie of evolution. There's no way that we're going to feed into the lie about the work of our hands producing anything. And the questions that the world thinks are foolish, such as, why is this happening to me? We're going to understand that those are actually the good questions. That it's a stupid question to say, what's my evolutionary function right now? Who cares? What is that doing for anybody to understand fear response from an evolutionary perspective? That does nothing for us. It certainly doesn't lead to healing because there's no truth in it. It is an absolutely good and right question that God raises in us of, why is this happening right now? Because God has told us why these things are happening. That is a good question for us to ask regarding COVID. Why is this happening right now? Why is climate change happening right now? And when we ask those questions, then we acknowledge the sovereignty of God, then we have a solution. We actually have a solution to that, because we can go into the word and we can say, God says when he sends these things, if his people, not the world, if his people who are called by his name will turn and seek his face and humble themselves and turn from their wicked ways, then he will restore us, heal us, and heal our land. And if we've done that and we still die, or if our loved ones have done that and they still die, at least we can rest in the fact that they endured till the end. That was the last thing they did while they were here. They turned to God. That was the last thing we did while we were here. We turned to God. And let me tell you something. There's no amount of science that is going to fight against the will of God. When he says it's done, it's finished, it's finished. We don't need to sit around torturing ourselves with, oh, I shoulda, coulda, woulda. No, God decides when we go. It is a waste of our time to process these things with anyone but the one who sent them. I hope and pray that the Holy Spirit will minister that to you and show you any ways that you have been placing a human expert or the work of your own hands before God, so that you can have an opportunity to return to him, and he will return to you, and he will minister to you why he has sent certain things in your life. Thank you for listening. God bless you, and I'll see you in the next video.